Live, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our July meeting. If I could first begin with the statement of acknowledgement. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to those from other communities who are with us today. For they hold the memories, the tradition and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Councillors, welcome to this meeting and welcome to our staff who are actually our only gallery again tonight, and welcome for those who are viewing at home. Another very eventful day in our city and for our Albury-Wodonga region and community, and not in a good way. Item 3 tonight is apologies and requests for leave of absence. We do have an apology from Councillor Hall tonight. She is a brand new granny and is on babysitting duty, so congratulations to the Hall family. Item 4 is declarations under acts, regulations, codes or local laws. We do have a late item, councillors, tonight, which is actually a petition that we all received very late this afternoon. In an endeavour to deal with it swiftly, we have put it in as a suggested late item. Councillors, to go in as item 12.1, and the petition is for Batt Avenue traffic. Councillors, do I have someone move that an item of urgent business, petition Batt Avenue traffic, be included in the agenda? Thank you. Councillor Watson, thank you. Councillor Mitchell, does anybody need to speak against that? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll see that as 12.1. Declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a conflict at 8.14.
Nope. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. They're there on the bottom of page 3. Do I have someone move that for me? Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Thanks, Councillor Watson. Anybody wish to speak against it? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 7 is delegates' reports, of which there are none. Item 8.1 is actually in this separate attachment, councillors. It's the June 2020 quarterly and monthly finance report. I know the staff have worked feverishly to actually get this to us. So there is, you'll note, quite a few items done in yellow to indicate that this is an interim report, and we will see the end of the year financials in the forthcoming months. I think it's August or September. We'll receive those. So, councillors, there's quite a bit of detail there. We have had some discussions around that today, and the recommendation is on page 22 of 28 of that document. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Lowe, any comments? Did any councillor wish to make a comment? No. Councillor, I think probably worthy of note just for people at home that yet again we've received, which is a good thing, our financial assistance grants from the state government, from the federal government early, and so we've done that quite a number of years where that occurs. It's actually not irregular for that to happen, so we just need to deal with that in the financials. And we do have some shift around of some of the capital works, particularly those things that have been directly affected by COVID and our ability to actually get out on the ground and deliver those. So, councillors, we will see a little bit of movement around some of that capital stuff. Councillor Bennett, did you have anything to close? Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Okay, now the next few items, councillors, are all of those new policies that we need to do under the new Act. So we need to work our way through those. Item 8.2 is the public transparency policy. The recommendation from officers is on page 13. Do I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This policy is an excellent value add and again demonstrates Council's desire to involve the Wodonga public in the decision-making process whenever possible, and it's part of our 2020 LGA policy. Sorry, I just missed it then. and yeah, a great thing to happen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand why we have to do all this because of the new Act and everything else, but I see irony in the fact that it's a public transparency policy, but we're only giving 2 weeks' notice for people to make submissions and so on, when most other things we do are at least 28 days. I just see the irony. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's probably a bit like budgets. I look forward to all the submissions. And if they can work their way through all the policies, councillors, we know how many there is and how many we're having to wade our way through, that I'm sure it'll make for very interesting reading for our community. Councillor Mitchell, did you need anything to close? Councillors, motions there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion's carried unanimously. Item 8.3 is council expenses policy. The recommendation is there on page 17. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Bennett.
So this document looks at all the expenses that are involved with being a councillor, so things like the allowance, motor vehicles, travelling expenses, IT. It also looks at things like councillors' welfare, if you're a councillor that has a disability, or you're a councillor that is a carer. So this is actually a really good document to go through, particularly if you were thinking about running for council, because you can get a really good idea about what's involved. And like all these documents that are going up, it's probably good for everyone, councillors, candidates, community, that this information is really clear and that there are no grey areas.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This policy is a natural follow-on from the public transparency policy, and again, the Wodonga public are the winners.
It's probably just worthy of note that this policy and others are up for review quite regularly, and I urge that the incoming councillors probably take a look at this particular policy, just due to the fact that 2 reasons: so they know what they're in for when they come in, and B, that you end up spending a lot of time away from family. And one of the particular notes in this particular policy is exclusion sometimes for partners to be included in an expenses policy. And whilst I don't necessarily disagree or agree with it, it is worthy of a discussion for the incoming councillors to have, because they must be made aware that they could be out 3, 4, 5 nights a week if they're committed to being a councillor. You know, there's obviously councillors that are happy to show up on the last Monday of a month and put their hand up, and that's about it. But when you are putting your own effort into it and being part of a team, and essentially, you know, councillors are a team, and they're entitled to their own views, and they should debate their own views, but they should also work as a team for the best outcome for the community. So I urge them to have a look at this particular policy. Thank you.
I think it's worthy of note, it's sort of been touched on. Many of these policies have actually already been there. And for example, this one was, and this one's only really been fine-tuned to actually sit with the new legislation. So it's only that we're doing them en masse, because otherwise what you see is they're actually distributed across the 4 years as we review and update. So you're right, absolutely spot on, Councillor Lowe. They're reviewed all the time, and then done also in accordance when there's any legislation change. So this has been there. It's not like this is brand new. But good comments about incoming councillors to get an understanding of expectation. Thank you. Councillor Bennett, did you have anything to close? Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.4, talking about elections, election period policy. Recommendation is there on page 21. Do I have someone move it? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Watson. Any comments?
So this just looks at how the organisation continues to function during that caretaker period. So this is really good, again, for all current councillors to make sure they're all across and all in candidates as well, because it is quite an interesting time, and the organisation has to be really wary about how they conduct themselves and, you know, what we're showing on social media. Another example is any information that us as councillors or say candidates ask for during a certain period of time is actually all recorded, so we can ensure that the organisation is giving, you know, fair and transparent information for everyone. So another great document to read if you're thinking of running for council.
Madam Mayor, this is probably one item that I'm always very keen on to, so we do inform our community of what their requirements are and doing their due diligence before you put your name in the ring. So once again, we've always had this policy, but it's been refined for the new Local Government Act, and I look forward to having people look at this document online so that they can get some good, valuable information if they're seeking election of council.
Any other councillors? No. Councillors, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.5, another one of these pesky things, governance rules. Probably a pretty important one, I'd say, and again, all relevant for anybody thinking of standing for council. Councillors, the motion is there on page 27. Can I have someone move it? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thanks, Councillor Bennett. I just beat you out of the gate, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson, any comments?
I think it's probably a very opportune time to thank Kevin Scully, our governance officer. He has done a power of work over the months since the new Local Government Act has been put in place. I do, think Kevin does a fantastic job getting the finer points out to us that have changed in the acts and things like that. So I commend Mark, your staff, but particularly Kevin. This is really his night because of all these new changes. But once again, it's one of those things that we've just got to bring up to speed.
Against this, otherwise I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.6, the Common Seal Local Law. Again, another one of the changes. The recommendation is a little longer. It's on page 31. Can I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Watson. Comments? No. Anybody wish to speak against it? Put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. I think we have a whole bundle to go still at the next council meeting as well, probably for the next couple of council meetings as we work our way through that new local law. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also worthy of note, councillors, that all of those items we've been sharing with regional cities Victoria to actually share the writing of, the checking of, and that's been fantastic in terms of resource use. Item 8.7 is, now we move into Leon's moment, is the tender for asphalt program 2021. A pretty important tender given that roads, rates and rubbish and roads fall very much under this category. So the recommendation is there on page 38. Do I have someone move that for me? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Watson?
Madam Mayor, this is what occurs every year, that we need to keep updating our roads and asphalting programs. Very happy with how the process went through. And I'd just like to say that Woolworths would like to probably take an asphalting program out because there's a very big pothole in the white box car park. It's getting to the point it's very dangerous. But anyway, if anyone at Woolworths hears this tonight, I'm pretty sure they'll get the message.
Councillor Mitchell, that's one way to place an ad. Good on you, John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The soon-to-be successful tenderer operates a local depot in Wodonga, employs local people, sponsors schools and clubs in the region. They're truly a Wodonga citizen, and I'm pleased that they are the successful tenderer.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against this? If not, I am going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.8 is the tender for minor and miscellaneous reseal preparation works. The recommendation is there on page 45. Do I have someone move this? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Do you wish to speak to it? Mover?
Madam Mayor, from the previous report, it's the same.
Thank you. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against it? If not, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.9, tender for pavement dig out and stabilisation program. You have lots and lots of fun in all of these tenders, Leon. Very exciting night for you. Recommendation is on page 51. Thanks, Councillor Bennett. I have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Bennett, did you wish to speak to it? Does any council wish to speak to it? If not, I am going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Fancy taking me seriously about not talking too much tonight, councillors. Item 8.10 is the tender. This is a pretty important one, the tender for architectural services for Baranduda Fields Football Soccer Pavilion. We all know that we received funding, so this is another step in the wheel for this. The recommendation is there on page 60. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, this must have been a huge effort on part of the staff that did the evaluation of the tenders. There were some 17 submissions, which is fantastic to try and find the best possible candidate for it. I actually Googled Canvas projects proprietary, but I'll be voting in favour of this tonight. And it'd be worth community to have a look at what programs and projects they've done throughout the state and across Australia. So I'm looking forward to, if accepted and voted on, seeing their work coming to Wodonga.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've waited for this start date a very long time. I'm very excited that it's finally getting underway, and as John, I'll reiterate what Councillor Watson has said. There were 17 tenderers, and that means that it's been very competitive. With the pricing that has come in has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this project too. Not only has it been a long time planning, a long time coming, but we've received a substantial amount of funding for it, which means the community benefit from it without actually having to put in a major cost to it. The project's been brought forward, which is much needed, and the reason why it's much needed is because our sporting fields have been over capacity for a long time. You know, we've had to have people training in different sports down on Gateway Lakes, the grassed area just next to there, whether they're a football team, hockey team, soccer team, whatever. The way we have to manage the grounds must be a nightmare for some of the staff there as well to book times. So this is about getting the infrastructure in the ground and getting the needs up to speed. This is not about one particular club or one particular sport or one particular group. This is about future-proofing ourselves. If there's a positive that has come from COVID, it's actually given our grounds a rest. Without all the sporting clubs being able to play and fulfil their commitments on the field, it's actually, if you take a walk around Wodonga and have a look at our ovals at the moment, they all look magnificent. So big thumbs up to the people that are looking after them. They're doing a magnificent job, and they probably appreciated a little bit of time to put the work in there. But I'm very much voting in favour of the tenderer tonight too. I, like you, John, did a quick Google and made sure, in my opinion, that they've had experience in the field, and it definitely looks like they do, which is great. Thank you.
I think it's worthy of note and really just to put out for some public information. So July 2020, that's now, our funding agreement absolutely kicks off with the federal government, the $10 million we were so fortunate to receive. And then this project will be delivered by 2023. So it is ready, set, go. We've got a lot of work to do because we have to drag those services into that site. So community, look out in the next couple of weeks. We're actually going to put out some more detail of what that planning and what the steps look like and the milestones that people can expect, and some more pictures just to describe what's going to go out there so that the community is very aware of, as we see things, diggers go in there and then we see things start to emerge from the ground, people will have a better understanding. So keep your eyes open, and we'll have some more information out in the forthcoming weeks. Councillors, you can have a closing.
Madam Mayor, it'd be remiss of me not to thank probably former councillors, but particularly Councillor Rod Wengman, and the drive of all our sporting associations in Wodonga that came to lots of community consultations when we had that dream, when we had that first idea out of Baranduda. Now it is reality, and I think we need to always remember what's been in the past that did bring us to this point today. So congratulations to all those people who had a dream to make something big in our city.
Great comment. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, the motion's there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.11 is the renaming of Frederic Street Road, and it's the feedback from the public consultation. And on page 64, there is the recommendation from staff. Councillor Bennett, given you're our chair, I'm going to look at you. I'm looking over this side of the room because I've got Councillor Mitchell ready to jump up as well. But Councillor Bennett, would you like to put one of those recommendations as the motion?
Yep, so I'd like to put forward A, that the renaming of Frederic Street Road to Frederic Road be adopted.
And then item 2 as well?
Yep. So this item actually came up to the Place Naming Committee, the PNC, mid last year. So that gives you an idea of how long things can take. So this was raised by residents that it's really confusing to have a road that has road and street in it. And on top of that, which I think is probably the most important factor to consider here, is that emergency services also flagged that it was confusing for them. And we'll all still be very aware, and it's front of mind for us, the fire out that way on the other side of Bears Hill earlier this year, which is where this area is. So ensuring that emergency services have absolutely no confusion around this area is paramount to us. The PNC put this out for feedback, and we did receive one submission that was concerned that if we got street out of the name that it would lose the historical significance. But we've also worked out that this family has another streets road named after them as well. So the significance of their legacy certainly, won't be forgotten. Yeah, it won't be lost. I did have one question to Officer Klein about what consultation has happened with the family.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there's been quite an extensive attempt at contacting family members of Frederic Street. The residents of Frederic Street Road who actually requested the name change provided contact details for a street family member who had moved to Queensland and has been living there for over 20 years. We did approach that family member. He didn't agree with the name change, and we also requested from them contact details of locally based family members, and they were refused to provide that information to us. So we continued to try and locate some local family members. There was certainly one local member. We've tried a number of attempts to try and find some contact details for them and weren't successful. We did locate another person with the street surname who we attempted to contact and left messages for, and those messages weren't returned. We also, when we did the consultation, the public consultation, we put it out for longer than the mandatory 28 days to ensure that there was plenty of time should any of the local family members see and have an opportunity to provide some feedback to us. So that's the process we've gone through. It did take some time, and there was certainly considerable efforts gone to.
Oh, sorry, no further questions. And I just wanted to make one other point around why I've put forward A, Frederic Road, as opposed to B, Frederic Street. The actual surface is classified as a road, not a street. So again, just trying to keep things consistent. That's why it's applicable to be a road, not a street. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Bennett has been very clear in the explanation of what her committee has decided, and it's the logical conclusion. Thank you.
No. Councillor Bennett, you don't need anything to close. Councillors, the motion is before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.12, park relocation. Recommendation is there on page 69. Councillor Bennett, thank you. Seconder? Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Bennett.
So there's a park in Killara, Sharborough Park, and we've discovered that it's built in cultural heritage area with Aboriginal significance. So we've decided to relocate that park. It's a very short, it's a 2-minute walk in the same area. And that's because areas with that have been identified with cultural significance have to be developed differently, as they should be. So this is just a win-win that we can still honour, developing that place with the sensitivity that it deserves, but also make sure that people in that estate still get their park.
Probably, as per normal, Councillor Bennett has summarised it very well, so I'll probably just echo her thoughts and save the timer. Thank you.
No, just a comment.
I just got a quick question, just from the graphics in there and having driven around there, usually as mum's taxi service, but I'm just looking, that has a really large gum tree in it. I'm just sort of wondering how useful that space is. It's more about green space than it is actually about active playground space. I'm getting nods, the people at home won't be able to see, from our director, Deb Mudra, that that's the case, and I do actually know exactly where that park is. And that can be a little bit disappointing for our community in terms of green space. But understand that we needed to move it from a cultural heritage sensitive area. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Now I'll give it to you to close.
The final point was that the Scarborough family has been consulted with and they're happy with this as well.
It's okay, we won't let our CEO choke. Councillors, motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.13, correction and setting of penalty infringements amounts. So this is a correction, I take it, to a previous report that had been adopted. There was a misprint in terms of where the point was. It was 0.05, not 0.5. So this is a correction of an error in a previous report. Councillors, do I have someone move this? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thank you. Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Giving you a new name. Councillor Bennett, did you wish to comment? Councillor Mitchell, it's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody wish to speak against? Councillors, the motion is before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.14, Councillor Mildren, you have a conflict. Would you read that out for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have an indirect conflict. My business has been involved with one of the submitters to this amendment.
Thank you. Now, councillors, the recommendation is there on page 80, but before we go to that and I ask for someone to move, I'm just wondering whether it's Officer Schultz or whether you've got your voice back, CEO, would like to just sort of talk a little bit about the process, particularly around the panel, so that community members at home actually understand the difference between VCAT and panels and etc. So is that to Leon? Leon, would you come up and take one of the seats at the microphone, please? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, sure. The planning panel is a independent expert panel that is appointed by the Minister for Planning, and the task of a planning panel is to assess a planning scheme amendment to in this case, the Wodonga planning scheme. It's a process that usually entails significant submissions by submitters and also expert advice and opinion offered on both sides of the fence, as it were. In this particular case, the size of the amendment or the importance of the amendment was overseen by 2 panel members, both highly experienced, highly skilled planners in their own right, who presided over the hearing, listened to something in the order of 23 submissions, and culminated in a planning panel recommendation that is before the council this evening. Planning panels deal with planning scheme amendments. When we talk of planning, the subject planning, VCAT ordinarily would deal with objections to planning permits and notices of decisions, and so VCAT sits on one side, planning panels deals with planning scheme amendments.
Thank you for that clarity. I think that's worth people at home understanding, because planning is pretty complex, but having that disparity between the two is important. Councillors, the recommendation for this item to adopt the amendment post the planning panel is there on page 80. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
So, as Officer Schultz said, the panel who are involved with this are independently appointed by the Minister, and they are experts, so it's fantastic to have all of this information. About a week and a half ago, councillors was sent a very in-depth report about 50 pages, and this is the summary of that. One of the main points I'm going to read out is the panel concluded in its report that the amendment is strategically justified and well-founded and should proceed. So they've looked at every different factor and aspect. An example, say, is road safety, which was a concern that was raised. So they have said that the proposed amendment doesn't cause any issues with road safety, but they did recommend a few minor tweaks. And you can see that throughout all the examples on page 74 and 75 with all the areas that they've looked at. They're either satisfied with all of them or they've recommended a minor tweak. So I'm really happy to move forward with this one.
Madam Mayor, we know we've all been discussing this for a long period of time, and I think our fair process has come to fray. And I'd also like to thank all those people who did put submissions in, because that's our democracy, and people can have their say. But really important, I think Baranduda deserves this, and it's going to be a good way forward.
Councillors, if you just indulge me, for the 15 years that I've been sitting here, there's been discussions around providing amenity to Baranduda and its citizens. And so to see this come up, I know that we've had some challenges in terms of thinking how this fit, and it fit in that part of the community. I'm not a planning expert, so I am absolutely relying on the planning experts of the panel to have worked through these. Having looked at the report in some detail, the thing that I was really pleased about was each of the submitters was, in my opinion, treated with respect. You saw things as far as even materials and cladding and glazing and all sorts of things was actually considered. So it wasn't just the larger planning issues, it was actually right down to some fairly granular detail that the community felt like they were being impacted on. And so to see the panel actually really respect those opinions and also try and deal with those, and they have, even in very specific points, I think is actually, I think that our community should feel pretty satisfied with that. The reality is with a planning decision often, well, you can almost guarantee that not everybody will be happy. But I think that I'm absolutely relying on these experts in having worked through all of those and coming up with some, the ones that I read, some pretty sensible solutions to address some of the concerns. So, councillors, I am going to support this motion tonight. Councillor Bennett, did you have anything to close? Councillors, motion is before us. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Sure can. The recommendation is that Council adopt the amendment C132 to the Wodonga Planning Scheme under Section 29 of the Planning Environment Act 1987 The recommendation to the Minister for the Planning that the permit that applies to the amendment be granted with those changes as recommended by the Planning Panel Report, Wodonga Planning Scheme Amendment C132 and Planning Permit Application 103/2018, and 2, that Section 173 associated with the Amendment C132 be signed. Councillors, all those in favour? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Speedy, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Watson. Against, Councillor Mitchell. Thank you. Thanks, Leon. Councillors, item 8.15 is the Two Cities, One Community Action Plan Report, year ending June 2020. Given border closures, we may need to add some more things. Councillors, the recommendation is there on page 83. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Thanks, Councillor Watson, both committee members. Councillor Lowe.
From Two Cities, One Community inception, our community has embraced this. And nothing's been more evident than right now during COVID to really highlight the fact that we are just one community here. So if there's any naysayers and doubters out there, I'd like to see where you're standing now. The way our community has embraced what is going on with us on both sides of the border now, you know, we're here to accept this action plan report tonight, but this pales into significance into how our community is banding together right now. And how they're banding together right now is why this initiative and why this action report, even though it's hefty detail, but it's why it's really important. The fact that we've secured the regional deal now for Two Cities, One Community, we're going to see the benefits for that for a long time. So I'm happy to endorse this tonight.
Madam Mayor, the second point of the recommendation that the dates of the Two Cities, One Community Strategy Action Plan and Review be extended to 2022. I think that's a very positive thing in the sense that we are in the past that both Albury City Council and Wodonga City Council had elections in the same year. Due to COVID and the change of the New South Wales extending their election one further year in, it just gives us a little bit more time to brief the other councils. So I think it's a good point to have point 2 in it.
Councillors, motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 9, officers' reports for noting, of which there are none. 10.1 is planning report. It is for information only. Was there any questions or comments? Thank you. I think the only one I picked up, councillors, is the new development 28/2020 in High Street. That's a pretty exciting development. Was the old O'Malley's, but we're going to see serviced apartments there. Good to see investments still continuing in our city, very important. Item 10.2 is the building report, again for information only. There was one pickup today. We had a discussion around of the $4 million there on page 88, and that's V2 Foods. Again, pretty exciting. That is brand new jobs and brand new industry sector into our community, so it's absolutely fantastic to see. 10.3, competitive services report for June. Heaps of work going on. Again, for information only, was there any questions or comments? Nope. 10.4 is assemblies of councillors. Questions or comments? Item 10.5 is decisions register. Again, for information only, questions or comments? Item 11 is notices of motion, of which there are none. Item 12, we do now have 12.1, the petition for Batt Avenue traffic. Again, I'll just remind councillors, we received this into our in-trays late this afternoon, so thank you to the staff to actually get this in swiftly so it can be dealt with for the members of our community in Batt Avenue. The item is on page 24 of that extra piece of paper. Are you happy to move that, Councillor Mitchell? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Mitchell, did you wish to say something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The referring it to the Chief Executive Officer is correct because it's an operational matter. Normally a matter like this would lay on the table for some time and it needs to be addressed fairly soon. So we're doing the right thing by referring it to the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I take a divergent view to that of Councillor Mitchell. I don't think this is an operational matter. This is a strategic planning matter. We've strategically planned how the road layouts are, which have potentially caused this problem. And to my way of thinking, we should be asking for a report to be brought back to this council rather than having the matter buried away, not to come to the surface to the public eye again, but to be dealt with only by the CEO. I don't think that's the appropriate action in this case. I don't think it is an operational matter. I think it's a strategic matter and it needs to be dealt with in that manner. And to that point, I would suggest that we should be seeking to get a report back to this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm going to speak in, sorry, Councillor Lowe or Councillor Watson, did you have anything to say? No? I'm going to speak in support of the motion of putting it to the CEO. Like so many things, and there's some people out there who like conspiracy theories and would like to try and suggest otherwise, but in my time sitting at this table, when there has been an item that, you know, clearly has impact on the community and shifts into that, I'm going to call, whether it be public arena or whether it call into the political arena, I've yet to have a CEO serve here that actually doesn't bring it back to councillors. So I would suggest that our CEO will go away and do the work that is needed, and if needed, would absolutely, if it fell into that strategic realm and or anything that could be politically motivated and or certainly has a larger community orientation, I'm absolutely confident that our CEO would bring it to us. And like I said, I've yet to see a CEO who hasn't done those things. So I'm really comfortable with your motion. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Mitchell, did you wish to close? No, Councillor's motion is before us. All those in... Yeah, ready, sorry.
A question and a statement in one is, because I also am happy for the CEO to take it away and have a look at it. But what I'm really keen for is if we think there has been an error made, that we just put our hand up and say, yes, there has been an error made, and we think that maybe the design of the street hasn't worked and functioned the way that we thought it did, and or that it does. It's doing exactly what it is. So I want to know when the CEO, I'm probably with Councillor Milden, that a report of some description should be brought back to acknowledge whether the function of the road is doing what it's supposed to do and or what it's not supposed to do. So, because sometimes with all best intentions, sometimes we just don't oversee some things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Given that there's a motion still sitting on the table, councillors, that motion is there on that page 24. There we go, 24. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Item 13, council seal, of which there is none. Item 14, general business. I do know that Councillor Watson has indicated that he had a quick general business.
Madam Mayor, I'll be as quick as I can. Can I preference this by saying that due to COVID-19, many residents of Wodonga have lost some of their loved ones, and without being acknowledged in a church service or any way to send them off. But I bring to a point two doctors that we lost, one in March and one in June of this year, and that is Dr. Moran and Byrne. When these doctors arrived in town, and particularly Dr. John Byrne, the population might have been somewhere like 4,000 people. It was a very small city. There probably wouldn't have been many GPs at the time in Wodonga. And I've just got a few little words I'd just like to acknowledge these two gentlemen, or these two doctors who gave a lot to our community and probably brought into this world a lot of our residents. So I'll start with Dr. John Byrne. He passed away on March 15, 2020, aged 88. Dr. Byrne will be remembered as a great doctor and a community man with a forthright manner. His name Wodonga Citizen of the Year in 2004. He was a school teacher before undertaking medical training in Sydney and later went on to work at the Albury-based hospital in 1960 before joining Dr. Bill Grant in practice in Stanley Street. And Bill Grant was my early doctor, and I think Bill might have brought me into the world, so I remember that little practice in Stanley Street. Dr. Byrne had a diploma in anaesthesia, assisted in many operations at the Wodonga Hospital, and he also delivered many babies in his time at that hospital. He was the first medical director at Wodonga Hospital and worked as a medical officer for Wodonga Council for a period of time in the 1970s. When he wasn't attending to patients, he enjoyed sport, including his time spent as a rugby league referee and a state-level softball coach and umpire. He was a lover of good food and wine, being at one time the president of the long-time member of the board at Wine and Food Society. So our thoughts go with the Byrne family. The most recent passing was Dr. John Moran, who served at Albury Wodonga as a dedicated general practitioner for 45 years. Passed away, as I said, on the 13th of June, aged 74. The well-loved and respected GP who was known for his passion for learning, held degrees in medicine, arts and hospital management and qualifications in rural medicine, forensics medicine and sports medicine. As a Winton motor racer chief medical officer for more than 2 decades, his dedication to the sport and attendance on race days allowed the motor racing at the venue to continue. Dr. Moran loved collecting items of interest, artefacts, shells, old books, wine, plants. He was passionate about gardens, especially liliums, of which he had extensive knowledge. Dr. Moran served almost 30 years on the board of Wodonga Regional Health Service, including a stint as chairman between 1986 and 1991. He had been on the board for the Border Division of General Practice and the Albury Wodonga Health Board for 6 years before recently retiring. As well, he has a role on the health boards. He was a doctor who worked with forensic services and regularly called by the police to assist them. And finally, just last year, Victorian Police recognised his 30 years of service in the role of police medical officer. He has been recognised for the services to rural medicine. So both those gentlemen gave a lot to our community, and I wish their families very well.
Can I just, sorry, to that one? Am I all right? Yep. I just wanted to say, Councillor Watson, can you forward me that information and I'll make sure the place naming committee have that info. So it's on our database, and also maybe even speaking to Albury Wodonga Health in terms of when they're naming, buildings and wards, that might be some great names for them to have as well.
Thanks for providing that history. It is important to keep recognising people in our community who have absolutely contributed a lot. So thank you, Councillor Watson. Item 15 is urgent business, of which there is none. Item 16, there is 2 questions this evening, both from the same gentleman, and the CEO, you'll read those out and answer those.
Madam Mayor, thank you. 2 questions received today into the council, both from Mr Danny Chamberlain. I'll deal with the first one in relation to Kelly Park. The question is, I refer to the redevelopment work approved to be carried out at Kelly Park, specifically the removal of the pine trees at the southern boundary. I was bemused to see that workers have been on site, horizontally boring under the line of trees to lay conduit along the nature strip, directly through the root systems of the trees. When questioned, the workers stated that they had waited almost 3 months for approval, and removal of the trees would almost certainly require the work to be redone following up with, "Oh well, I guess they'll pay us to do it again after they've finished." Why was this work approved with the removal of the trees imminent? Or has there been a change to the plan for the work scheduled at Kelly Park? In response, Council would advise Mr Chamberlain that these works and the workers are nothing to do with Council. These works are being done and funded by a private organisation, that organisation being the NBN network, using their appointed contractors. The works do not have anything to do with the proposed replacement of works to Lawrence Street Bridge. Council was aware of these works, however, and in November 2019, when we were advised by the NBN of the proposed works, initially the plans were to do open trench works. This was not permitted by Council due to the likely impact on the root systems of those trees in that location. And therefore we actually advised to them that our preferred and most friendly environmental method would be the boring under the line of trees, which is what has occurred. Council staff haven't supervised those works, nor would we, noting they are done by a private organisation using their contractors. But we do not believe that that work that's been done to date has impacted or damaged any of those trees. And it's also our understanding that those trees or the works were limited to an area directly adjacent to Kelly Park soccer fields, not the tennis courts. So Council has no intention of removing those trees in the near future. Thank you. The second question, again from Mr. Danny Chamberlain, I refer to the recently signed and long-awaited regional deal. I have attended or watched online council meetings over the last 2 years, and in this time I have not seen any resolution outlining the details of this deal and authorising the signing of the same. Was a resolution passed in camera? If so, why? Was it done through the officer delegation by the CEO or others? Or was the decision made by the Mayor alone to sign without council input and approval? And what are the consequences of signing without a resolution? Surely we don't live in a totalitarian autocracy where the leader can do whatever they choose with no recourse to the citizens and council as a whole. I would start off by saying I certainly don't agree with Mr. Chamberlain on this count, but let me give you a council answer. The regional deal has been developed over many, many months. And at this stage, all that we have done is to get all 3 levels of government to agree to and sign a statement of intent. I say all we've done, that in itself is a fairly significant and lengthy task to which the council and our mayor and our councillors should be congratulated. The signing of a statement of intent is largely symbolic and ceremonial in nature. And I can assure the community that it does not commit our council or community to anything at this stage. The next steps of the process, and it will be a lengthy process because this is about long-term transformational opportunities for our city, but the next steps will involve a whole lot of planning with all of those deal partners and consultation with the community to determine what the deal will look like for our region and what commitments are needed by each of the deal partners. What commitment will the federal government make to transform our region, the states on both New South Wales and Victoria to transform our region, and potentially some commitments from both the local government in Wodonga and in Albury. At that time, any decisions that impact our community and our city would of course come to council for a decision by resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, for your comprehensive answers. And I think it proves an earlier point that perception is not always correct, and those who wish to try and make a conspiracy theory out of some things perhaps should make sure they have facts. I would personally like to comment to Mr. Chamberlain, and will do so, the inference that I would act inappropriately with powers that I certainly don't have is bemusing, to say the least. And councillors, it was disappointing that we actually couldn't have the ceremonial signing with all councillors of both councils in attendance because of the COVID rules, because absolutely this should be something to be celebrated, putting a plan in place that enables this community in this region to prosper and grow and offer opportunity for all of our residents is something that should be celebrated. Councillors, item 17 is confidential business, of which there is none. Item 18, confidential urgent business, of which there is none. Before I close the meeting, only to make people aware that next Monday, the 27th at 9 a.m, Council will be having a special meeting to receive the EOI process that we actually adopted at the last council meeting, and it was in the resolution. To remind you that that is there. I knew that I'd need to give you a little reminder, councillors. And that's the EOI process for it's referred to as Lot 2, but for all us locals, it's the block of land next to Rockler. We receive the final EOIs tomorrow by 5 p.m, I think it is. We will be holding that special meeting to receive that EOI process. We also will have a next scheduled meeting at 6 p.m, Monday, the 17th of August. As yet, please, community, if you are watching at home, we will need to watch the new rules around what we are allowed to do in terms of meeting and meeting safely. So please keep on to our social site, because we'll be putting out as much information as we can should we need to meet via Zoom. And also, just before I close, I would like to personally thank the Albury Mayor and the Albury Council, who have been absolute partners as we have tried to understand the implementation and work with our community in terms of the border closures. I've also been in contact with all of the other surrounding Shire mayors, and we have been working absolutely hand in hand. So thank you to you and CEO through you and your team, and also thank you to the 2 cross-border commissioners who we've continued to meet at 8 a.m. every day online, and they have provided updates and certainly enabled us to put feedback into the respective state governments. So, councillors, that leaves me to officially close tonight's meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your input and your work throughout the last few weeks to get to tonight. And please, good luck with future border crossings should you need to.